This is a story. This is Richmond. It's related to our story, but it doesn't start here. The story starts on a train. I mean, why not a train? You don't have to drive and you can drink. You can drink a lot. It's a nice way to get from A to B without a care in the world. Oh yeah, did I mention? We're all dead. And you know all that afterlife crap they give you? Well, turns out things are a little different than that.
Good evening, everyone. It's your boy Twitch back. It seems the coterie has split up and gone their separate ways. I believe things are going to become extremely boring around DC, so I think it's time for me to move on. Maybe I'll go to Chicago next. Maybe Richmond. Maybe somewhere else. Who knows? But it's time. To all my viewers, thank you. This is Twitch. Final broadcast here in DC. Safe hunting, bloodsuckers.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the final DC by Night. This is our cast Q&A, the last one we're going to be doing. So I'd like to welcome everyone here. Of course, I hope by now you know who we all are. We've only been doing this for, actually I didn't realize it, but 3 days ago marks our 9-month anniversary streaming. So I kind of didn't realize this on Sunday was our 9-month anniversary. So it is what it is. So, hello everybody. You know who I am. I think you know everyone here. So
It'd be real weird if this is where you came in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be kind of, if you don't know who we are by now. Oh, wait a minute. First question. Darth's already hitting the question. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to take questions from the viewers, also the players, questions for each other, questions for me, whatever. Before we start the question, I would like to start off by saying thank you, everybody. It's been a fun ride, and for being my first Chronicle in 20 years, I think I did as best I could. Thank you to the players, Jesus Christ. We've been through a lot with this one. And I'm going to open it up first to the players if they want anything they'd like to say about what's going on in the past. I mean, for us, it's been 14 months. No? Yeah, 14. No, 16 months.
I have the notes here somewhere.
16 months, I think, of us, because we started in February. So that would make it 16 months of this Chronicle. So I guess Rylin is our moderator for this, of course, as always. But I'll let her have anything she wants to say before we pass it around her opening statements, like a courtroom case.
Somebody else can start.
I can't think of anything. I was prepared for answering questions.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to echo what Shanky said. So this has been a hell of a ride. This was my first tabletop RPG and first exposure to vampire. Wow, it's a lot of learning, but it's been great.
I would say I hope you enjoyed it. I really do, because
I really did.
You're glutton for it because you signed up for Wraith. So you're a glutton for something around here. Okay, since nobody has anything to open with, I'm going to do the first question. I would like to know from each person how you felt about the ending to your character story. Your personal feelings on it. Hey, don't hold back. I'm sure it wasn't 100%, well, I can't say perfect because it was bad for everybody. I did predict Locke would have the better ending of everybody, and I think Locke did, because she didn't even lose fucking Mallory, because you have to reward 7 successes on 8 dice. I mean, that was an almost perfect roll in terms of dice, so you have to reward that. But I'll let Relin say how she felt about her end, and I'll shut up.
I liked the ending. The ending was good. I like that it was also left a little bit open to where we can revisit it later if we choose to. And I do like that. And I really felt like that even though it was posed as a choice, it really wasn't a choice, because offering Lily a position as Seneschal, she wasn't that politically motivated. The political motivation was strictly for elevation of her clan. So becoming Seneschal wasn't going to advance Toreador any further than anyone else Toreador could do. So she really didn't, see that as even an option that she would want. So ultimately, her choice at the end was the only choice she would make, which was to preserve the younger Toreador.
Okay, Lance, yours?
Oh, okay. I'm actually very satisfied with the ending for Steve. It's not as bad as it could have been. I mean, there was no way Steve was going to come out of this happy or in any kind of good shape. So I think he made the best choice he could make for himself. I mean, the hell with Victoria, and sorry about that, Esmeralda. But,
Yeah, seriously, what the fuck?
What the fuck, Steve?
That's the good character.
What the fuck?
well, it was not her. She got dusted.
Yeah.
And Katie, your turn. Let's see what you have.
Well, first, if anybody has missed her, Quartermain's Familius. For anyone who never caught on, Quartermain and I are married, so we share dogs. I was very happy with her ending. It felt like a very Locke ending. It was a great arc for her, that she went from this irresponsible, not really irresponsible, just had no responsibilities, kind of person to, a loner, to having a bar and a family, and that she was the last coterie member standing in DC, which is an interesting place. She's not the one who I would have expected to be the one that didn't jackrabbit back to the West Coast or to Baltimore. So to have her still staying in DC with her bar, it was an interesting way to end for her character.
And it's funny you say that, though, because Locke, as you put it before, Locke is the survivor. She's always been the survivor, and she doesn't make the waves that the rest of the coterie did. So I'm surprised you thought you would be the one to have to cut and run to the West Coast, where the whole Chronicle, you were never really in the target hairs of any of the power players other than Sybil. For the rest of the power players, Locke was not a target, because Locke wasn't blackmailing somebody or starting shit with Granger
or
eating people or
I'd like to say I'm the only one in the coterie who didn't eat a person.
That's true. You also are you didn't tip the regent a $5.
No.
I mean, that was shit that he did. So you really didn't make the waves everybody else did, which was interesting. Now, from my point of view as storyteller for this question about this is, I like how I ended it. I think the central theme, there was a theme to the whole Chronicle in a lot of ways, and it was those choices you make as a kindred. That choice between, and a lot of times the choices you make, the little compromises, the sacrifices you make of who you are as being a kindred, that slowly wears you down. That's why Karina kept mentioning it. And I'd said from the beginning that before it was over, I was going to make everybody choose between morally questionable decisions. Quartermain's, had he survived, would have been, I think, one of the hardest ones to come up with, honestly, from a story perspective, because what he did is, at no point was he ever doing anything that would make him have to make that choice.
He was our Boy Scout.
He really was the Boy Scout. And the few times that he was put in that situation, he not only made a choice, but he essentially atoned for it himself,
Mm-hmm.
which was interesting. It was a great part about it. So I'm happy with where it ended. I like Rylan said, I like how that there is a future for the Kindred of DC. We can always revisit, though I'm not sure Lily and Locke would want to see Brian anymore. Because
How much Locke knows about. I mean, I think Locke would be the one to be the most understanding because she kind of took Mallory to Sybil and made a very similar decision.
Oh, Lily is pissed.
Oh, I imagine Lily is very pissed. Locke can see the logic of it. Yeah. No. Which, by the way, about the Mallory thing. When Jake found out,
Oh
he's
no!
like, what did you do? I'm like, who's your mama?
see, and for those that don't know, Katie actually is on Jake's Discord. Jake from Q Times, he played Mallory the Thin Blood, because Mallory was an actual one of our guests. And Jake, that sass you saw from Mallory is Jake in a lot of ways. I mean, that's how he is. And I love Jake because I've talked quite a bit with him privately and, DMs back and forth and a lot of tech. I mean, he's given me a lot of advice tech-wise. But yeah, I don't think he was happy with that one part because he went on Twitter and put, "You're not my mom," which was pretty fucking funny.
Yeah, he thought it was hilarious. Like when we chatted about it, he's like, that's so appropriate that that's how it would end.
Yeah,
like,
I was worried you wouldn't like that ending because you were forced to sell out one or the other. I knew when I came up with that you were going to sell out the Thin Bloods for Tabitha. Because while the Thin Bloods were newer to Locke's I Want to Protect, you had wanted a relationship with your sire ever since you were abandoned. And I think that there was no way you were going to betray Tabitha or leave her to Sybil.
Yeah, and let's be real, if she hadn't turned over Mallory, she would have eaten through every Thin Blood in DC until she found him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So...
And for those that didn't understand why I did that, why she wanted Mallory, from the point of view of the storyteller, I looked at, if you're that old, if you are thousands of years old, you are the North American Antediluvian, is what her nickname is, even though she's in Methuselah. Thin Bloods were not a thing when she was last awake. This is new to the Kindred Society, and these Thin Bloods are doing things that other Kindred, even someone as old as her, can't do. And for someone that old, of course, they get a little scared of it, but they also want to know how it's being done to find out, is it something they can do themselves? And that's why I had Sybil do that, is I felt she would be so curious about how can this one who's barely even a vampire give tattoos that stay, or give, changes and change the face and the hair and hairstyles to a kindred that's unchanging. And to her, that is a mystery that she can't abide. She would do anything to find out the answer to this mystery. And that's why we did this. That's why I had her do that. And I hope to the viewers it made sense, and I hope to the players it made sense why she would want a Thin Blood like Mallory, as opposed to all the others that did things. But Mallory was the standout from what Brian saw, because most of what Sybil knew was either her using clairvoyance, which is a lower level power really, or what she was using through telepathy straight with Brian. Because she never got a strong hold on Locke. She could only get a little glimpses through Locke, and it was very rare that she saw through Locke's eyes. She mainly skimmed Locke's thoughts. So that was why she went that route. And she knew that Locke would be the one who could bring him. And she also knew she was pissed off at Locke in the first place for, throwing away her gift. So
then Spectre Alafet, who plays Natalie Bertrand in our game, also made a good statement. I mean, he also was being protected by Dorian, which is Team Gold Eyes.
That too. And I know Lance is going to have a question about that in a minute, about what was Dorian's game, because I know that was one a lot of people were wondering. But first, let's see if anyone in the viewers got a question for me or any of the players. Now's your chance. Let's ask some questions so that it's not just me talking the whole time.
Okay, so Darth asks, "What the fuck, Steve?" I imagine that's going to come up a lot. It's just Steve. That's just the answer. It's just Steve. He makes the worst possible decisions all the time.
And I have a comment about that. When we started this chronicle, Steve had a background, but he didn't really have a story arc at all. Other than he hates Granger because Granger thought a steak was a proper way to babysit a kindred. And a lot of the Steve developments developed over time, and it developed with plot twists that I discussed with Steve before about, well, what if Granger's not your sire? What if all your memories are fake? And we added that later. So this Steve progression is not the original character because, as Lance said at the start of this was his first RPG. So his character was not as fleshed out in terms of story hooks for the storyteller as Locke, as Lily. Even though Lily had not played a vampire before, she understood the concept of, because I'd had long talks with her about, you got to give me something to work with as storyteller. And Lance didn't give me nearly as much to work with, though it turned out what he didn't give me was perfect to make a story for him. So I thought that was great how that worked out.
Now that actually brings me to a question I have for Lance. Did you intentionally pick bad choices with Steve to develop better story?
Not at first, but as we went on through the chronicle, yes.
Okay.
I gave it long thought. What would be the best choice, and then took the other one.
Yeah.
Which one
I
will
figured
make
as much.
that?
I didn't guess that. I just thought he was trying to stay true to Steve Perry, but you were deliberately picking the bad choices to push your story further. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, Jonan has a question. With the rest of the coterie gone from DC, what would you imagine Locke would be doing in the days to come and now that she is in DC on her own?
Well, she's not really on her own, because she kind of ended with the new coterie. Because she ended with Tabitha, and Bloodlicker now likes her, and she's got One Punch Jack, and she's got, this cute and stupid guy who, at this point, she would start breaking the bond. He may bolt to the woods. He may stick around. He wouldn't bolt to the woods.
Nope. I know Lily kept saying he was going to, but from his point of view, he was outside DC because he didn't feel safe. That's why he didn't want to be in DC. It was not safe for him. But with you there, and he knows Bloodlicker's not out to kill him, it's obvious he likes Tabitha, he likes you. You put up with his humor, which is weird. And he honestly would be staying around Locke. So if we ever revisit the coterie, you will still have Bear Boy. You will still have Bloodlicker, which is an odd member of a coterie. But she is there for Tabitha. Mm-hmm. Because though we didn't express it, I can see down the line Tabitha and Bloodlicker becoming an official thing.
Yeah. So she would probably stay. I could see her very politically. She might approach the new prince with the thin blood question. Again, once things are settled in DC, I could see her approaching her again with just, hey, let's get lunch. Which is whatever it is in the middle of the night, but let's talk, and that'd probably be the only political thing she would do. I also see her as making a play for Alpha, because I'm assuming that Art leaves.
And you assume correctly. Art would be being thwarted by Sybil. He would move on trying to find her because they're, like all the elders, they have a rivalry that goes back a very long time, and they don't let go. So he is going to go find her. So Art would be leaving Clan Gangrel without a figurehead, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that answered Jonan's question. I could see Locke hanging around and trying to run Gangrel.
Yay, fans! We have the ship, Lock and Key. Okay, so Spectre Elefet has a question. Looks like this one's for me. Does Lily think Helena will have an opinion about the Methuselah activity or just chill? Lily's still active. Okay, so I'm thinking that Helena, she's a bit occupied with her machinations in Chicago. So she might have a passing interest in what the other Methuselahs were up to, but she wouldn't become directly involved. That's my logic on what Helena would be of the opinion about that. She would just be happy that Lily was able to survive it as an agent of hers and move on to possibly get some further intel in some other domains.
And Helena's obsession is Menelea, who's a Bruja. Their war has gone back since Carthage fell, and in retaliation for Helena being part of why Carthage fell, he retaliated by blowing up Pompeii, which was hers, and that started their war. The other Methuselahs in DC, I would see she would be interested in only from a informational sense, but she's already established that the one she really cares about is not in DC. So Lily moving to Baltimore wouldn't bug her at all because her agent is now moving, and now she can have her agent search Baltimore for her adversary Menelea, because Helena don't know he's dead. And if you read Chicago by Night, it alludes to he's been destroyed. It even says at one point, it never tells you how he was destroyed, but it says at one point when he was destroyed, his children were broken free of their bond to him. So he's gone. She does not know this though. So she would have Lily searching Baltimore, and maybe Lily would stay in Baltimore a number of years before she would get an urge to move again at some point, because ultimately, as an agent of Helena, she's looking for Menelea. And he's a Bruja, so maybe he's in an Anarch City.
Okay, then Darth has another Lily question. Okay, serious question. Is Lily not worried about Fatima following her to Wayland and Raphael, or is that in the back of her mind? Honestly, Lily would not be concerned about Fatima going after Wayland and Raphael after Yosef declared that they would be spared as long as they remain exiled indefinitely.
And Lily should feel that way because if you remember what Ivan told her, Ivan Markov, about what he knew about Yosef, he said that Yosef is known as a man of his word. He is known to, he keeps his word and his promises. So had she not taken that option and they were declared destruction, Yosef would have turned heaven and hell over to destroy them because he had said that was the decree, and he would have enforced it, period. And that's why Fatima was there. She was to be the ones to kill Wayland and Raphael. So from that point of view, it made sense to me that he would keep his word because that's what Ivan had established. And for the exile on the subject of Yosef, one of the things when I made that him as a Justicar, because he's a totally created person, he's not from kindred lore. One of the things I made from him is he understands that we can't destroy promising kindred, ones who've shown worth. That's why he favored exile. That's why Anton favors exiles, because Quatermain was exiled because Quatermain was a stand-up guy and had shown he was good at information. So the idea was he can be exiled and maybe one day come back, and they haven't wasted a useful tool, sparing him. And that's why Lily was also given the exile. It was a character trait of Yosef. Had it been one of the other Justicars, she may not have gotten off lucky. She may have been destroyed just because.
Okay, so Mr. Plunderloot says, now that you guys have played Vampire, what other World of Darkness game are you most interested in playing?
Okay, for me, Wraith. We know this. Next question, or next person.
For me, it's interesting. I have a friend, James, who for years has been like, Katie, you should play Mage. Katie, you should play Mage. Mage is awesome. You should play Mage. You'd love Mage. And I'm like, no, I don't want to play Mage. Mage is... And I was like, I blew him off. And then I got a chance to play a little Mage, and I'm like, oh, I should be playing Mage! And I loved it, because it's very creative. It's a book this thick. You could kill somebody with it. But it's one of those books that's full of rules that don't mean anything, because you just do what you want. And I got a chance to play just a little bit of it. I'm like, oh my god, this is so much fun and so great. And then I went to him like, hey, do you want to run Mage? And he's like, I'm a lawyer. I need you to tell me that you would feel safe with me running Mage. I'm like, oh no, never mind. But, you know, he is, and it's like, but that's one of the ones where I'd love to play that, because it's such a neat, open, free, creative system with just enough bitch slapping to make it like real.
So what she's saying is, if Tamshu, Tiss, or anyone else in the McStabber Discord that would look at a Wraith or a Mage stream, you might get Locke signed up pretty fucking quick. Just saying. I think that's what she's hinting at. Or even a Discord Mage game. Because Katie plays in a number of Discord games, and she'd even be, I think that's what she's saying here. I'm not putting words in her mouth, but.
Hey, Lance.
Oh well, I'm really excited to play Wraith next. I don't know a whole lot about the World of Darkness games, so
Play a mummy, man. It's legit.
You mentioned that we did back
it.
We did back the Mummy Kickstarter for 2 hardcovers and 2 PDFs, and we are actually thinking of doing a stream for Mummy, at least 1 or 2 one-shots or a short mini-series of it, and giving away one of the hardbacks on stream as part of that. So Mummy, you joke, but it's on our list. And Matthew Dawkins' voice convinced us to back it like we did, because I've never even looked at Mummy before.
Okay, and then for me, I am excited to play Wraith. It's one that once I heard about it, I really wanted to play it. I mean, I want to play a ghost. I've seen dead people since I was like 3 years old. I'm like, I want to play a ghost. So, but I'm really interested in, Tamshu is mentioning that he's planning on starting up a Changeling Chronicle, and it's going to be Changeling the Lost. Yeah. And it's basically the Dark Changeling, and I'm like, I really want to play that. So I'm like super excited about both Wraith and Changeling.
Changeling is also bonkers and fun.
Yeah.
Changeling is like, I got to play with a couple of them. Changeling is bonkers and fun. Mage is bonkers and fun. There's another one where you play neither mages or changelings, but it's still goddamn magic. I can't remember which one it is now.
I don't know that. I know there was Prometheum, which is Frankenstein, where you know, Frankenstein's a monster, you're creating people. Orpheus, which was the successor to Wraith, where you're playing a normal human, a living person, who gets put into comas and goes into the Shadowlands of Wraith. But I don't know. I know there was Hunter. I don't know which one was the other one.
Demon.
That one was an interesting one I remembered about too. Demon the Fallen. I don't have the books for it, but it sounded interesting, to be honest.
Okay, make sure I'm scrolling back to catch questions. Okay, Ravenna says, my question is, if you were to do it all over again, is there anything you would change?
Okay, I'll start with this one because there's a number of things. The first thing I'll say right off, had I to do it over again, I would not have picked a Gangrel as Lily's enemy. She had picked enemy as one of her flaws. And picking a combat clan, because that's what Gangrel is, they're best at combat, to oppose a Toreador was a very shitty choice in terms of as a storyteller. I should have, honestly, her enemy should have been Chaz Voyager.
Yeah.
As a political and social opponent. Should have been. But that was my mistake, and I've learned from it. Other things I would have done better. I would have had the Thin Bloods come up earlier for Locke, because I know Katie had wanted some Thin Blood stuff earlier than we got to it. I would have actually introduced it a bit earlier, honestly. And I would have never fucking ever given any one of these players a Primogen, Sheriff, or fucking Hound spot. Because A, I wasn't ready as storyteller for that. B, there's not enough fucking Kindred in DC to do it. And C, putting first-time players in those positions, which is Lance and Relin, isn't fair to them as players. And I admit that now. Other than that, I'm trying to think. Those are my biggest beefs about it all. Those are the biggest things I know I would have changed. I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, so.
I wish that we had started the Brian story arc much earlier in the Chronicle, because that would have given us time to get a lot more detail in that and more coterie involved.
Looking back at it for that one, I agree. If we could have started it earlier, of course, we didn't come up with a lot of that until much later in this thing, but if we could have, it could have allowed for, from the get-go, instead of immediately going, well, my memories are all fucked, we could have just randomly thrown memories in while you did something, and I'd just tell you have this memory, and you're like, well, where did that come from? And we could have slowly built up that you have these gaps instead of what we ended up doing. I agree. But now that you've done this, now that you've played it, I'm sure you understand now to make a character with these kind of hooks earlier.
Mhm.
Lillian, Locke, anything you'd see different?
A lot of my stuff kind of comes down to like even just it's kind of like character sheet stuff. I probably would have changed up because eat food is fucking awesome. She should have been eating Doritos this entire chronicle.
That would have been awesome.
The bagged blood thing very rarely worked out for her because it
And-
was so hard to get shitty blood.
By the rules, I wasn't supposed to allow you to take eat food, but I looked at it from a storyteller perspective. Well, how does a kindred fucking know they can eat food or not?
Yeah.
I don't give a shit what the rules say. From my point of view, if you practice long enough, why wouldn't you be able to learn to keep it down? It's a matter of willpower, right? You
Yeah.
roll willpower to keep it. So if you practice enough, you should be able to not have to keep using willpower to do it. And that's
Yeah.
why I let Katie get that. Speaking of that, I wish I had put more of the Bloodhound stuff, especially some of the changes we made to make it more useful to you. I wish we had done that earlier in the Chronicle because
Yeah.
you spent half the Chronicle not being able to use your Bloodhound.
Yeah, and the problem with a lot V5, I have complained about V5 so much, is that a lot of their stuff is not well delineated. So it'll say like, oh, you can't buy off advantages or disadvantages, and there's some very obviously that you could. Like, you could make money. So it doesn't really make sense why you wouldn't be able to, or even learn how to do these things. So it was just kind of a... I think she should have been eating Doritos the whole Chronicle.
And I like to think as a storyteller, I'm really lenient on the rules may say you can't do this, but if it doesn't make sense and the players want it a different way, we generally, I'm loose for the story. I mean, let's be honest, half of what happened with the art, Sybil, Esmeralda, Theodore, all that shit, that is not exactly rules as written, okay? There was some creative license taking with the rules there for stake a story. So now let's see what Verlin has to say about different.
I would have killed off Malik way earlier in the Chronicle. Because that took for fucking ever to get around to. And then, let's see. That's a biggie. Because by the time we got around to it, both the character and me as a player really didn't give any fucks about him anymore. Oh, and there was... Oh gosh, I just had it. Hang on. Oh, the time. Definitely not going with strict dates in the game, but letting time just elapse between sessions.
Or
So-
just being nebulous with time
Just
in
being
general.
nebulous,
Yes, that's not a mistake I'll make again. Wraith is not going to track exact dates. Chicago will not track exact dates because while it may work somewhat for a home game, a streamed game, it really makes no fucking sense at all. Even for a home game, it's kind of iffy. You should assume there's a lot of time passing where you're not watching the players.
And you kind of need, because otherwise you end up, in D&D you'll see this, where you have level 20 18-year-olds, because time does not pass.
Right.
And they start the Chronicle at 8, they start the session at 18, 18, their first level, but because you track day by day by day, it's 9 months later and they're level 20, and they're basically gods in D&D when you get to level 20.
Well, look what
so a lot
happened
of
with
them-
Vampire.
Expand. Yeah, it's like expand time, say 4 months pass, you're not doing anything
Right.
much.
Because look at what we're in our Chronicle. In game time, we made it to September. We started
9 months.
Yeah, 9 months of actual game time passed. And in
Yeah.
9 months, you guys went from neonates, 15 experience points, to I think we ended the Chronicle with over 300 experience points.
Yeah.
Which
It was-
in 9 months is insanity.
I have the notebook right here with all my tables. let me pull this out and tell you exactly how much we had at the end of the Chronicle.
Katie was our table scribe.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect it from the Int 1 Gangrel, but yeah. We ended the Chronicle with it'll be 217, because that was the last one, so we didn't get XP at that one.
Oh, I thought we made it to 300 by that time.
Nope, it was 217.
17 experience.
That's a lot, though, in
That's a
vampire
lot.
terms in 9 months of game time. So
Yeah, but that was 16 months of playing.
Mm-hmm.
So it took us 16 months to get through 9 months of game time.
Yeah.
Okay, Jonan had a question. Would Dorian possibly know what had happened to Esmeralda? If so, how would you imagine he would react to this?
I'd already established that Dorian was able to use the ley lines to see things. But if he could use the ley lines to see Sybil's resting place, he would have found her 4 golden eyes. So Dorian was unable to see what was going on in Esmeralda or in Sybil's bedchamber. So from that point of view, Dorian has no idea what happened to Esmeralda. I don't think he knows, and I don't think he ever will know, because while he can use the ley lines around DC, there has to be a logical limit. And while he has a lot of contacts, I don't think Steve and Sismeralda are exactly going to go places obvious that his contacts will find them. She needs to lay low and gather her power. So no, I don't think that Dorian would ever find out what happened. He would either think she was destroyed or ran away, maybe because she was getting a little too willful towards the end, and I think he figured she would have run off.
I have a question for Steve. Where'd you go? Where you end up settling down with Sesmeralda, who does not know this modern world. I'm assuming that Sesmeralda is going to let Brian deal with this.
I'm just thinking we're probably just doing a not a hobo, but kind of a moving from stay in one place for a little while, move to the next throughout the Midwest. Kind of keeping away from all the big cities where any of the more powerful kindred might be.
Because the big cities almost all the big cities would either be Anarch or Camarilla, because Sabat, and Jason Carlos confirmed this, don't expect to see Sabat really running any cities. I saw him mention it on Twitter. So they'd all either be Anarch or Camarilla. So yeah, you definitely just have to avoid any big metropolitan area.
Right, and that gives me a chance to educate her about the modern era.
So here's my question, and this has to do with that last thing. What do you think Brian's humanity is after that last scene?
Definitely 4. Yeah.
I agree. You would have lost the humanity for that little trade.
Yeah.
Because there's no way in hell you came out of that with your humanity intact.
No.
Plunder Loot says it's 3.
3 is not even functional anymore.
Technically Sybil was a 3, but if you look at the way she functioned, you can't go strictly by the book for 3, because then these elders would be completely non-functional. Hers is she literally gives no fucks about morality. There is no morality to her. It's all a matter of what she can do and can't do, and that's the limit.
Ravena says it's 2, and Darth and Terry says it's -72.
Darth and Terry has told me in this one shot we're doing on the Thread Raiders this weekend, it's Thread Raiders stream, he's planning to send 1,000 werewolves on me.
No, 9,000.
9,000 for that last for this last episode as payback.
Okay, so Plunder Loot asks, is Steve glad he finally got that ship he always wanted?
Yeah, he
got that ass.
He really is. And what I'd say about that ship and that ass is that he likes it, but he's not real sure about the motor that's powering it right now.
Yeah, but that's his fault.
But you can rest assured, sex is the last thing on Sybil's mind. Period.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that was already out of Steve's wheelhouse at that point anyway.
Yeah, or that's a done. You're not doing that anymore.
Right.
That mainsail is not getting lofted.
So they're not really doing it in the dark.
They're doing something.
No tooth banging.
They're doing something, but it's not fang banging.
All right. Jonan asked, were there any story arcs or things you would have liked to explore further but didn't get a chance to?
I'll let Relyn have that one first because I know she's got some.
Yeah. Exploring the new Chaz. I hate that happened at the end of the game. Because seeing who he was without the Methuselah's influence, he might have been someone Lily could have gotten along with. Then also developing a bit more of the clan relations with other Toreador. Because Lily didn't get a whole lot of that, really.
Yeah, talking about things I wish I would have done differently, I'll be honest. Looking back, I wish I had run New Orleans by night instead of DC by night. Because there's just not enough fucking Kindred in DC to do a lot of storyline that I would have loved to have explored. Because even canon DC was very low on Kindred compared to a lot of cities. And once I removed problematic Kindred, and I deliberately deleted, had them dead through the Sabbat Wars and everything, some very problematic Kindred, like the literal fucking Nazi, because I had no intention of that being part of my game. Once I removed that kind of shit, DC was really fucking gutted for Kindred.
And as someone who's run Amber, running a cast of thousands isn't easy. It can get, it can get weird and complicated trying to keep track of that. But yeah, it would have been neat seeing more clan relate, or like on our level is like in the same vein as Merlin, just on our level politics. All the other 13 gens, because it's like we're the only kids in town.
Yeah.
Just about. I mean, there were a few 12th gens, but not
most of the ones that were on your level were the guests.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm hoping for Chicago to have a more street level focused game rather than the high politics. It'll be more about your domain or your coterie's domain and the inter-clan politics rather than the citywide politics, And that's the hope. We'll see if I can do it because, I like to throw supernatural shit in everything.
And there's even inter-coterie politics because not every coterie is going to have a domain.
That's true.
That's true.
So,
how about you, Lance?
Well, I think, having started a little earlier with some of the plot twists that we put in Steve's lap would have been better. Aside from that, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that I would love to. We came up with them late.
I know one that we never got to get around to because we never really dealt with our touchstones because they were always like, nope, keep them far away. Was Locke's other touchstone.
Mm-hmm. And in general, we didn't deal with much touchstones because, and there's a reason I didn't do that. It's having come back after a 20-year break with everything else going on, I didn't feel comfortable really focusing on them because I was still getting the rust knocked off, getting my feet under me again. So I expect the touchstones to play a little more. I don't plan to do like LA by Night. I love LA by Night, but there's no reason that one of the touchstones of one player should be the boyfriend of another player and then gets turned into a ghoul, because Victor should have taken a massive fucking hit for allowing his son to be ghouled as a fucking touchstone. That should not have been allowed. That should have just punished him for that. But I do hope to make the touchstones a little more of a focus this next time.
Jonan has
Because one thing that you would have discovered if we had gone after her is that she was a dead ringer for Lily.
Oh, I did not know this.
Oh.
See, even I didn't know all the details.
Who was her other touchstone?
Her dad.
No, yeah, her dad.
Oh, Lilith Waverly was her roommate when she was getting straightened out.
Oh, that's funny.
That's right. That was the one when you had gotten off the drugs and right before you got embraced. And I will say, Katie, having seen the guests and the players, you were the first person I'd ever seen, actually not just with this game here, but in all my time playing Vampire, that deliberately picked an ugly character that wasn't Nosferatu, who had no choice.
Yeah.
And I've emulated that a bit. I actually took the ugly trait on my Ventru MMA promoter for this one shot because so many people don't pick it, and I think it's great from a story perspective to have that. And I'm glad you took that because it actually factored in at times with your character. Though we didn't do the dice penalty normally because you weren't wanting to try to use your looks for anything really.
No.
Whereas Lily would use her looks even though she didn't have the dots in it so she didn't get bonus dice, she would use her looks to do things. Locke never relied on that.
She does a lot of threatening.
Okay. All right. So, question from Jonan. Curious if you can recall any interesting or funny after session conversations regarding a particular session.
God. I mean, we would sit and chat at various points about what went on. I don't know. I mean, I know Rylin and Katie would have like behind my back strategizing sessions.
We would plot all the time.
And I know I had plotted various shit behind Lance's back with the rest of the coterie, like telling them, don't go see Granger, just ignore Granger for now. I'm waiting for the reveal if that's his sire. But I'm trying to think of any post. I know there was some funny before session shit that got done, mainly regarding me making fucking something up, because I did that a lot in the recordings. I fucked up shit constantly, like a 20-minute part where we weren't recording, or a whole hour with Spectre Alafet in a vignette. Which, by the way, talk about something to do different. I would not have done vignettes. I did not realize when I suggested it and said, let's go with this, the amount of effort that would go into. I thought it would be, the same level of effort as our game sessions, but it's not. You have to figure out something that fits the vignette. You have to schedule the people, and because it's not your normal time for playing, it takes more time to schedule it. You have to, it added twice the workload of a 1 hour session. Instead of being 2 hours worth of work to do a 1 hour session, it's like 3 to 4 hours worth of work for me just to do a 1 hour recording. And so that's another thing that I will not be repeating in Chicago, unfortunately, because holy hell, it's just a lot of work. Anyone got it? Can you remember any post-game funny shit that went on?
I do. It was before we started streaming. Before we started streaming, we went a little more in depth with Lily's hunting. And basically, Lily likes to play with her food. And
Quartermain every time she hunted.
Let me talk, please.
You're going to tell the Quartermain?
Yes,
wow.
I am. You need to let me talk. It's my turn. So basically, Jim, who plays Quartermain, Katie's husband, he used to always comment whenever Lily hunted or fed that she gave the guy a chub. And that used to just end up after session being us cackling about it afterwards. It was absolutely hilarious.
And Jim, up until I called him out on it before every recording, when I would say, everybody ready, the very first thing he'd say before we started recording was, suck it, Bill. Just suck it. And I was like, as soon as I called him out, he stopped doing it. But before that, it was always suck it, Bill, starting off. And it became like a thing. I was waiting for him to say suck it, because then I know we could start our intros.
We used to do a lot of notes reviewing on the drive up when we were still driving up there, because I'm the note taker. But he was the investigator, but he didn't take notes. So I'd be reading my notes to him as we're making notes. And we used to, one thing that nobody ever saw was we didn't have to do it as much later on when there wasn't 50 fucking plots going on. Things were a little simpler later on. Is I would have the okay gang team meeting, and I'd go down the list of things that are unresolved, not had checked on. We made a call to this person. We're waiting on a call for this one. What do you think about this? There'd be a team meeting before the game would start. Mm-hmm.
Those were great.
Yeah. Not needing them after a while because everything got a little simpler.
Yeah.
But
you're right. Things got simpler because I realized I was just putting way too much shit in. I was, coming back from 20 years, so in the beginning I was throwing everything at everybody. And I might have gone overboard.
Just a little bit. Okay. Do you have anything to add to that, Lance?
No, I don't.
Okay. Plunderloot asks, saddest moment in the chronicle for each of you. Shanky, go last. Let's see what happens.
I know Lux right off the bat. It's when Quartermain left. she was shattered, and he didn't let her say goodbye. So.
Lance, you go.
Me? Okay.
Press F for Quartermain.
Well, literally the last scene of the Chronicle, where I had to make that choice between Esmeralda, Victoria, because Steve was kind of had two guys in his head, Steve and Brian. And while, Steve was just a snap decision, Brian, I really felt it was really hard making that, okay, well, Esmeralda, you're it. And that was definitely, for me, that was the saddest part of the whole thing.
For me, it's a tie between two. Waylon being presumed dead and dealing with Raphael grieving and Lily grieving at the same time. That was sad. Actually, it's the two. Because, that one, and then Lily's ghost fiance sacrificing and basically killing off the spirit that was riding Malik and reaching his I don't know what they call it, ascension or whatever. Transcendence. Yeah. Basically that was just so sad. That racked me emotionally. So, okay.
For me, Ludlow was the saddest scene for me, because for those that don't understand, Ludlow was my character. I created him specifically for a one-shot memoriam in DC by Night. He was part of DC by Night lore that B. David run. So Ludlow was my Malkavian. It's one I made for me, complete with his clan bane and everything else. So suicide is a tough subject for me. I lost a friend to suicide, a good friend of mine, and it's not one I normally want to broach, but from a point of view of Ludlow, it was what made sense for him because I knew the effects of his bane on him. So that was the saddest scene for me. A close second was, oddly enough, the scene I had with Locke when I was playing as Tabitha, talking about the orphanage. That orphanage scene, her breaking down about what had broken her as a kindred, about having to slaughter a whole group of orphans that had been embraced by the Sabbat, and her having to make that choice as a kindred, a very humane kindred, to have to make that choice of slaughtering these children. Those were my two saddest, and then the rest fall in. I mean, you've seen me break tears more than once. Quartermain leaving, I broke into tears on that one. The Raphael scene, multiple parts of the Raphael and Waylon storyline broke me down. But the two big ones will be Ludlow and the orphanage scene, because I was so deep in Tabitha as a character at that point that it was just horrifying what she had to do to me as a person.
Okay, so Plunderloot says, if you could have one celebrity storyteller as a guest storyteller, who would it be and why?
I'm going to avoid the obvious and say Jason Carl, just because, I mean, that's an obvious whatever. A guest storyteller and why? Trying to think of who would I know who I'd love as guest players as storyteller. I don't know anyone. I mean, sure, I'd love to have Jason Carl as storyteller. I'd love to play with Matthias Games from Roll For It. I've played with B. Dave before, so that one I've already got checked off. I'd love to have, from a player perspective, I'd love to see Danny Trejo at my table one time, just because it's Danny fucking Trejo. That would be awesome. Rory McCain, who played the Hound in Game of Thrones, he would be an awesome player. Aisha Tyler would be fucking awesome as a player. She's hilarious. There's a number, Matt Hillard. I watched the one-on-one shot. I've always liked him as an actor. He'd be great to play with. Kevin Smith would be great to play with. But storytelling-wise, just a lot of the big ones. I mean, I don't have a desire to play with Matt Mercer. I don't do D&D, and that's pretty much his thing, so that's fine. He can have his game. So Storyteller, yeah.
I agree with Plunderloot. He just commented. He says Matthew Dawkins, and I agree. I would love to play in a Matthew Dawkins
Well,
game.
we could. We just got to get on his Patreon because he runs a
Yeah,
game
and it's
for that.
expensive, so I'll pass.
Yeah, I know.
But okay.
For me,
Oh yeah.
Jake Kyle is the one I'd love to be in a game with. He's the most realistic. The most unrealistic is probably Dame Judi Dench,
Oh my God.
who plays D&D.
She does. That would okay. I did not know that, but holy shit! I'd play D&D for Dame Judi Dench. I'm not gonna lie. I'd play some D&D for that. That's a fact.
I'd say Tamshu because he'd kill us all successfully.
I've been killed multiple times by Tamshu, so
Yeah.
I'm finally getting him at my table for Wraith. So
Okay, so Darth and Terry says most shocking moment in game you didn't see coming.
I'll go last for this one.
That was like every session.
For me, it's the choice that Steve made. For me, it's a lot of the choices that Steve made.
Okay.
Probably the most. What?
Do we
A
have
lot of the plot
yeah.
stuff was telegraphed.
do we have enough time to go through all those?
No.
No. I would say shocking moments was Steve drinking from Sybil. That shocked the shit out of me. The choice he made with Esmeralda absolutely shocked the shit out of me. I really thought Steve was gonna die. I thought he was gonna say, nope, I'm my own fucking man, I'm not doing shit. So I really thought he was gonna go out. And then Black Magic getting firebombed. Because legit, not even 3 days prior, I had talked to Bill about, playing as a Toreador, she would be developing this attachment to Wayland and Raphael and might want to think about an infatuation type situation with them. And then he has them firebombed next session.
And to add to that, when she approached me for this discussion, I already knew that they were going to be firebombed, but I couldn't let on that I knew that this was the plan. So I was like, well, you could Raphael and Wayland, that would work. You could pick one of those. And they would be if you're going to do what little vampire romance, because I'm not big on vampire romance. If you want to play vampire romance, find a different storyteller. That's not my thing. What little bit that was going to happen, I couldn't let on that it was going to be, they were going to get firebombed. For me, one of the biggest shocks was Lance's choice at the end with Esmeralda. I expected him to choose death. And I expected that because of the things that Ludlow had told him about, be your own man about that, stand your ground. Ludlow had hinted about those kind of things, and I expected him to not choose either one. That was a big shock to me. Quartermain becoming friends with Razor. That was a big shock to me because they were opponents at the beginning. I never expected that. And he took it a direction I didn't expect. And I ran with it because, fuck yeah, it was cool. Those were the biggest shocks, I think, for me. Because Katie's right, in a lot of ways, there weren't many story hooks that weren't telegraphed they were coming.
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing a while, so it's like, the second Lily did her thing, I'm like, they're dead. Like, that was my first reaction. They're dead. I don't care what deal she made, they're fucking dead. And I was actually going, it's really time for them to die. Like, they're still alive, and it's been a few, sessions later. And then it was fine, they're Fireburn. I'm like, oh, good, finally. That shoe's dropped. Good, because it's like, I didn't want us to be there. Not that I wanted anything to happen to them.
I know what you're saying.
Be there.
Quartermain gave me a number of shocks. I didn't expect Quartermain to give Glenn the ring.
Yeah.
But that was shocking. That he would give the ring like that. Stephen's ring, or actually technically it was God, now I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Felix.
Felix's ring. I didn't expect, that was shocking. Quartermain did a number of things that didn't make sense to me because Quartermain led with his heart, not always with his head. So he would do things like give the ring He threw curveballs at me all the time with that because I expected him to do things logically, and he would act on his heart first. But it fit for his character, but it shocked the shit out of me.
And that was Quartermain was what really shocked me the most too, when he stood up and just took blame for everything that happened. It's like, you know, he took responsibility for the Thin Blood getting killed and all the other things that happened.
For those who don't know this, I didn't know that was coming either. The day we went to record this, we record 2 sessions at a time. The day that we were recording, I'd had a talk. Quartermain had been saying that he wasn't happy streaming. He never enjoyed streaming part, and I understand that. And we'd had a talk. I explained to him that I'd rather him quit streaming and us still be friends than him force himself to stream, and then come out of it with both of us just pissed off. And he said he would make his final decision. Well, the day we started recording, we did the first half of the episode, and he said when we were on our break between episodes to eat dinner, he needed to talk to me privately. So I came down and got on my voice chat server, and we talked privately, and he said that's when he told me it was his last episode, which was, you know, in between 2. And he told me then, and that's when I got shocked that he'd, you know, planned to take the blame for everything. And I was like, well, how do you want to leave? Do you want to be destroyed? Do you want to be exiled? He says it doesn't matter to him. And I was like, well, just because to set the tone, I'd have him exiled, he's out. And I know he's not going to come back, but it sets it so that people, at least the viewers, get a satisfying of Quartermain's out there still somewhere, being the Boy Scout he is. So, but yeah, that shot, I didn't know that was coming until that session we recorded, honestly. And I like to think
everything.
Yeah, I like to think it came out well, and it made sense the way we did it. And that's why it touched me so much. It was very sad for me because, I mean, I've known Quartermain over 12 years now. So playing with him finally and then him decide to leave, it was emotional for me.
Okay, Plunder Loot says, any other RPG systems you are considering outside of World of Darkness for this channel, Shanky?
Well, I've made no beef about it. I plan to run a Paranoia one shot one night, preferably with alcohol involved, because Paranoia is better with alcohol. And I am looking at some point doing a sci-fi game of some kind. I love sci-fi, and I'd love to run a stream of some kind with it. I haven't determined whether I'm going to do. It's not going to be Shadowrun, but it may be Cyberpunk close to when the game comes out. They keep delaying it, but whatever. Or maybe Eclipse Phase because of the transhumanism parts of it. Someone else, Stars Among Men or something. I keep forgetting the name of it, but there's a couple options. I want to do a sci-fi game. Other than that, it's pretty much, for me, it's World of Darkness stuff. I have joked about if I ran a D&D ever, I would really piss everybody off and do a 2nd edition game, because that's the only way I'd run it. And I've even joked about a Gamma World game at one point, doing a mini-series, 2 or 3 episodes with Gamma World, which is classic, but I love it. So, Stars Without Number. There we go. Thank you, Plunder Loot. Plunder Loot said Stars Without Number. That's the one that I keep forgetting. Evie Eternal and Berlin have both suggested that to me at one point.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then Mortuus says, what was the most improvised moment?
Okay, mine's easy. The whole fucking Chronicle. I improvised 85 to 90% of the Chronicle. Improv is one of my strongest abilities, so I improvised it. I very rarely plan things out. The most planning for the whole Chronicle was done on the last 8 episodes, where I mapped out where I saw the story trajectories going and do an episode by episode format to see how many we had left. And it came to 8. So I improvised the rest of it, always keeping in mind certain rough frameworks. And I hope it made sense to everybody. And if it did, that's my improvising still making it make sense. I don't know about the other players' improvised shit, though.
I mean, that's really our job. I mean,
yeah. I would have to say, though, probably there was a scene I had with Minta where Yekaterina and Lily were together, and there was just this level of politicking going on between the two of them. It was this back and forth they were doing, and that was totally improvised, and it was so fucking awesome. Oh,
I
is-
will admit, the Locke or the Tabitha and Bloodlicker, that all started off outside of my framework, totally an improvised thing when Tabitha and Locke went hunting that night to say that Bloodlicker, that Tabitha had fed off Bloodlicker. That was totally improvised on my part. And by Katie's reaction, as soon as I saw her reaction, I was like, it's a thing now. This is canon now.
All right, Lance wants to know what was the ring that Locke threw in the river?
Honestly, just
He
the
doesn't
ring.
know.
I never did get to decide what it was. If it came up again or if it became a factor, I would have. I am big on things happening that I don't assign a reason for in the beginning, because I like to use it later on. And I've been very lucky with a lot of the weird things that happened actually had a tie-in later that worked. But in the case of the ring, it was literally, my view was it was a sign for Sybil that Locke would do what she said. It was like a test. If you'll do this simple act, throwing the ring in the river, you have proven that you'll do what I say. Had Locke not done that, it would have changed the whole ending of the Chronicle. Because if Locke hadn't done that, there would have been no reason for Sybil to feel that Locke had spurned the locket that was given to her. That was much like Steve's ring. It was basically a way to see and to have more control. Had you not thrown the ring in the river, I would have had to have a totally different ending.
Now, my question about the locket: would you have changed the power transferred if Locke had accepted it?
Interesting concept. I would have talked with you on the side whether you wanted to gain Oblivion powers through it.
Because I don't really know what she's gonna do with it.
Right.
She don't want those spooky ass powers.
And if you didn't want Oblivion powers, it would have definitely been her able to see you. We would have come up with a different power thing for it. Probably in your case, I would have gone for some bonus willpower. Basically, the strength of her will infusing Locke to resist certain things. Maybe more dice for resisting mind control when later on it came up against Theo, because she would have helped bulwark you against it. But it would have been, you would have had the option to gain Oblivion. But I think it worked best though that Steve took it, because prior to then, honestly, Steve didn't have anything uniquely him.
That's right.
So, any other good questions from the players? For here's got questions for me. That was a good one from yours, Lance. Oh God, favorite character in game moment for everybody.
From
Okay.
Darth and Terry.
I'm going to go last on that one.
If you're going to read the questions, make sure you read.
Well, you go ahead and read the full question.
Okay, Darth and Terry asks favorite character in game moment for everyone.
One that I always came back to as being a very big turning point for Locke was when she sat down and asked to be whip so she could control the Thin Bloods. That was a turning point for her. She's like, I'm going to be responsible, and I'm going to do the thing because I don't trust my coterie, Bait, or anyone else in DC to do this. Sorry, not sorry, Steve.
Fine.
That's totally fair.
You took them off my hands, which was perfectly fine with me.
Steve didn't give a shit about him.
No, I kill him. Whatever.
Brandon,
And
kill him.
we'd actually talked about that in our Facebook group chat. What Steve's opinion was of the Thin Bloods, and his opinion was literally, fuck them. He had no desire to protect them, didn't give a shit about them, and if they all died, he didn't care because of, well, he's a Kaitif and he's already been at the bottom rung and he gets treated like shit. They're below him, fuck them.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so Lance, your favorite character in game moment?
I'm thinking about that. I mean, there are several that I liked a lot, but I'm trying to think of which one is my favorite.
Okay, we'll come back to you. My favorite character in-game moment happened in our last session. Lily sassing off to a frickin' Justicar.
From my point of view, when she did that, would the Justicar kill her for sassing off? I'm pretty sure Justicars get mouthed all the fucking time. I don't think that it bothers them. But at the same time, they, sass or not, they're still going to do their will. They're not going to let it change their opinion. So that's why she got away with it, because I can't see him destroying just because somebody mouths off. Because I'm sure it happens a lot.
I'm gonna have to go with slipping the 5 to come.
Oh god.
That was so good.
That was awesome.
I mean, I had to reward him. He was doing he was told to be a good doorman, and he was doing a great job. So I tipped him. I mean, what else would Steve do?
That was awesome. Not gonna lie. From my point of view, okay, I loved every single scene I got to do as the Madam. I love the Madam as a character, and I'm not gonna lie, I stole the idea for the character from Matthias on Roll For It, Sounds of Silence first season. I changed her a bit and made her my own, but the general concept of this Madam character was from his game. And like I've told people in various interviews I've done, don't be afraid to take ideas that you see other storytellers doing and making them your own and doing them your way. And one of them was the Madam. I loved being her. I loved the esoteric nature of her as a collector, and I loved the fact that she could share things that otherwise, from a storytelling perspective, wouldn't have got shared. Because she would know these things, and her own motivations are her own. I just loved every scene I did as the Madam, which was, different, but I did.
Darth and Terry asks, was Lily right that the Madam wasn't Malkavian? Because Lily thought she was, well, what's now considered Hakata, but thinks she's actually Samiti.
She is Hakata. I never officially assigned her a clan, but she is definitely Hakata, and you can tell by her fascination with the spirits and her use of them. So she was definitely Hakata. Samedi, possibly. I never really decided for sure because it never came up. But she definitely was not the Malkavian that everyone else assumed. And you'll notice she never said her clan. Everyone assumed she was Malkavian, and she would just let them assume wrong.
Okay, and then Mama Distracted asked, what do you see your characters doing after this chronicle?
Well, Steve's going to be touring the countryside with Sybil for a couple hundred years at least while she regains her power.
Or unless she, breaks you and discards you.
That's always been a possibility. And
she told you
You a
that.
snack.
She told you. She warned you. She may hurt you. She may even destroy you.
Right.
She never lied about it.
Right. And that's what Steve loved about her, is that she never would lie to him.
Lily would... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Lance. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was done, really.
Okay. Lily would spend 10 years in Baltimore after negotiating with Vitel to open her club there. She would basically open the Succubus Club in Baltimore as a fuck you to the DC Camarilla. Because Toreador especially, but other kindred from DC will travel to an Anarch city to come to a Succubus Club. So yeah, it'd be a nice little fuck you. And it's a mutually beneficial fuck you, because then Vitel gets to say fuck you to them too by doing that. So yeah, that would be fun. Probably further developing relations with Wayland and Raphael, and looking to establish relations with other Toreador and maybe a few other Anarchs within Baltimore as well. Oh, and she would also spend the next 10 years trying to find out a list of names of people who sent Stanford to DC so that she can work on undermining them next.
Locke would probably spend the next 10 years first rebuilding Mallory, or as we renamed him, Sid. His name is now Sid. And
Are you
seeing
going to make him vicious?
that actually is, yes, that is what she named him after, was Sid Vicious. So I foresee her as trying, because she's convinced there must be something of him in there if he came back because of what she said. But it's not going to be full Mallory, but she's going to at least build him up into something that's not a doll again. Establishing like her coterie, gaining like alpha level of the gangrel in the area, and trying to like build relations with the Thin Bloods in a, we have to keep you safe. We have to keep you protected because things change. So. But she would stay in DC.
That makes sense. I mean, I could see that from Locke. I could, staying in DC like that. Lily would get Vitel would accept Lily from my point of view. Vitel knows how to control Lily. He knows how to run Lily now. He knows that at any point he can threaten Wayland and Raphael, and she'll do what he says. From his point of view, she makes a perfect person in his city. And it also allows, if the Succubus Club is in his city, it's a fuck you to the Camarilla. Because ultimately, had Vitel been embraced Ventru, Vitel would be up on the level of Hardestat by now. He would have been a god among Ventru had he been embraced Ventru. But he was embraced in Sombra. So anything he can do to fuck with them, I don't think he has a problem with at all. There's that. And yes, Jonan had mentioned the madam was pretty up there. Seemed no one in the city wanted to screw with her, even the prince. You're right. In her tower, she was unassailable, and that was the idea of her. Somebody who was totally, I love that idea of the totally neutral kindred who doesn't really play the politics. Though if you look at it, she does, but she doesn't do it directly. Her telling Steve that Golden Eyes was looking for his mistress is what made Steve tell his mistress. So she set Steve on the path he took. You'll notice that all of her little things she told everybody set them on certain paths. So though she doesn't play the game directly, she still does some shit. So yeah, no one assailed her because how do you deal with someone in a tower like that full of spirits? You'd have to blow up the whole place.
Yeah, that madam, she legit set up Sybil and Theo to basically get the fuck out of her city.
She did. And here's a question nobody's asked yet, and I'm shocked. What was Dorian's game? Guesses from the players. What was Dorian's actual game? What was he actually doing? No clue. Look, see?
Fuck if I know, and fuck if I
The
or
only
Lily
guess
care.
I got is he wanted to watch shit burn.
He originally moved into his castle because he was terrified of Vitel. He knew what Vitel was. And he also knew there's nothing he could do to stop Vitel from just fucking murdering him. So he set up in there. The way I looked at it is though he was crazy, he's still a Ventru. So what he really wanted, he was going to oppose any prince in the city that was not Ventru. And he was going to do everything he can to guide things into a Ventru being prince. While at the same time, he was looking ultimately for Sybil, for Theo. The art skin was just a way to hide Theo for a while hopefully Dorian could find Sybil. The idea was Dorian thought if he could find Sybil, then he could then break down what made art and let Theo come out to deal with her. And that way he could find Sybil where Sybil found him. And if you wonder why really art came apart, prior to what had gone on, Lily went to get Piter. Lily and Locke went to get Piter. Locke had already been talked to by Sybil. And remember what Esmeralda said, if you step in his castle, he filters through your mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Art showed up to ask Locke where she was. Because Locke had gone in there, Dorian knew that Locke knew where Sybil was, and that's why he allowed the Art personality to crumble, because the idea was, let's get Theo into the game again so that Theo can go find her from Locke where Sybil's hiding.
Correction, storyteller. Lily did not step inside the castle to get
Yes, Piter, to negotiate the Piter part about turning him over. There was, and that was after Locke had seen Sybil.
Okay.
So the funny story, Locke was this close when when Thart was talking to her, and when he's like, "Where is Sybil?" and he did the brain thing, and he was like being all alpha, and she's almost said like, "Whatever, I'll take you to the labyrinth. You want to go fuck around in the labyrinth? Let's go."
And had you done that, I don't know what I would have done.
And she actually, I think that if you go back and watch the video, I start to say, fine, and then he says, and he leaves, and I'm like, oh, well, I guess maybe I won't do that.
And that
was a bad idea.
That was still a little bit of what was left of Art in his head, fucking with Theo, giving him essentially kind of like ADHD, where every time Theo would latch onto something, Art would start nudging him towards something else he was also wanting to take care of. The reason he was so obsessed with the Black Spiral dancers is they figured from Locke's mind about the labyrinth, but they also knew that why would the Black Spiral dancers be crouching in that park? Their idea was that somewhere in there was a way to get into the labyrinth, and he thought that perhaps Sybil was sleeping under the Rock Creek Park, where or not Rock Creek, but the park where the Black Spirals were. He thought that's where Sybil was sleeping, and she was using them as guards. That's why he was so obsessed with taking them out, is he had thought he could find a way to get to Sybil that way. A little late though, but so the last questions? I will say this, I've had fun doing this. It's been great. I loved all our guests. I wish we could have had some of them back. I wish we could have got Celador to come back, because Dr. Philo was a fucking amazing character. I wish we could have done more with Sabrina. I had some great storylines for Sabrina, but it just didn't line up to finish them. I had great storylines for Minta, for Don. I loved playing with Don every chance I got. Not gonna lie, Don was great. There were so many things we could have done if we could have had more scheduling time, to be honest. Natalie, I know Relin and Natalie had talked a lot and had all kinds of plans for storylines for those two. That
so
we never
much
got to.
Toreador gossip. Oh my gosh.
But let me tell you, 10 guests, the way we were doing them, was a bitch to juggle sometimes. A bitch to juggle. Because I couldn't introduce them without a story thread of some kind for them. Otherwise, they're just a guest wandering around with nothing. And you'll notice each guest was always given a bit of the story that the rest didn't have. So each of the guests had a bit of information the guests could use, or the coterie could use in other ways. And that was something that I wanted to make sure each guest had. So, any other questions from the viewers or the players? I mean, if not, we'll be ending this here soon, because, well, I have had one hell of a day. I actually accomplished everything on my to-do list for a day, which is a first. But my body is saying you shouldn't have accomplished it.
I don't personally have any other questions.
Nope, I'm good.
Yeah, one last thing. The trap that Granger had laid in Steve's head, was that something that could get triggered again and again if he kept trying to access the old? Okay.
Yes. Every time I said to roll a willpower check, was checking to see if the trap triggered. All you needed was 2 successes. It's very easy to avoid it, but the law of statistics says eventually you will fail no matter how many dice you roll. So
right.
That was going to happen. Yeah.
Cool.
On the streaming, I know there's a discussion about some streaming stuff. I've got to say that when we first decided to stream, There is no fucking information on the internet about how to stream a tabletop RPG when you have multiple people in the room. I know Katie and Relin and Lance have seen every time they would come over, there would be a different setup in the room as I was trying new things. Or in different mic positions and different this and that, and let's try this instead of that, because there's none of that information. So if anyone is watching this and you have questions about setup, feel free to reach out to me, because we have trialed and errored so much shit. I've got a big grasp on how to set things up now. And Jake gave me some info, but even Jake does all of his in the same room. He doesn't do like we did, which is mixed, which I think from Katie and Jim's point of view was great when I finally figured out how to make the table and the remote players, because they were hauling ass an hour and a half each way with a dog at home. That made it difficult for scheduling, and it was so much easier. Yeah, it was so much easier when you could transition to being remotely rather than at the table, because it made it much easier for the game as a whole. And that was something that took us a while to figure out, for sure.
Okay, Darth and Terry asked, does Astral have his history yet?
Okay, this is a joke that they've been playing. I've been running off of no sleep here lately. I'm being bad no sleep. I'm surprised. I mean, you can see it here. I mistagged Darth and Terry because he's different. He's Artemis and Terry on our Discord, and Astral. So when I would hit A, I would see it at the top, and then I would just hit space and or hit tab, so it would move that, fill that in. Well, half the time, instead of being wherever my mouse was is who it ended up selecting. So I mistagged him. And not only did I mistag somebody about who was running a one-shot, I sent my copy of my character sheet to the wrong individual. So Astral got my character sheet and woke up the next morning finding out he was supposed to run a one-shot for me. He had no idea he was running, when it's really Darth and Terry who is supposed to get the character sheet and is running the one-shot. So they've been busting my chops ever since, and I love them for it, honestly, because
the game is Sunday. You need to write that history.
I've got it all in my head. I've got most of it written out. I'll get it to him tonight. That's my MMA promoter, Ventru. It's a great idea for a concept. It's one that Relin, I told to Relin, and she was thinking of using for Chicago, but
I've changed my mind.
She's changed. I will use it for this one.
I changed my mind about once a week.
Yes, I will get it. Don't worry. I will get that over to it. Get sleep. I wish. I'd love to, but I can't.
All right. Well, there's no more questions from chat, so we'll go ahead and wrap this.
Yep. I will say one last time, if you love Lockisms and you love Pathfinder, hit up Katie on our Discord, hit her up on Twitter, because she does Pathfinder with Jake Kyle on Q Times, and you could play with her. And I mean, there's a lot of Katie in Locke, and the Lockisms were not as much Lockisms as they were Katieisms. So you'd see them. I'm sad it's gone too, and I think everyone's a bit sad. But every chronicle has the end, and there's mistakes that I made in the beginning that I couldn't easily fix mid-chronicle. So the chronicle had to end to make room, first of all, for Wraith, and to give me a break. I'll be honest, I was hitting burnout towards the end because I wasn't playing any other games, and most storytellers will tell you they vary games once in a while just for that reset that I wasn't getting. So I'm sad to see DC end, and I'll miss it. I do think we will revisit DC September 21st. And I say, or at least around September 21st, because that marks 1 year from the very first episode of DC by Night that we streamed. And for the 1 year anniversary, we will revisit DC to see where all the players are 5 years down the line. So you'll get to see Locke with her new coterie, and Lily in Baltimore, and Steve. We'll see if he's still with Sybil after 5 years, or humanity without his mistress. So we'll see. So thank you all for coming. Join us on our Discord. If you want to follow the cast on DC by Night, go ahead. Watch all the old episodes. We're done now, so there'll be no new ones. Watch Ishfel, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern. I think they're off this weekend, though. I have to. They're coming up on they do 3 weeks on, 1 week off.
I think in July they're taking 2 weeks off.
Yeah, so watch for that. Haunted Chronicles, great episode this week. Had special guest Ravinia. She will be.
She was amazing.
She's because their episode ran 4 hours and they still weren't done. She will be back this week at 8 p.m. Eastern on Haunted Chronicles. Do catch Wraith Life Derailed, which is our Wraith the Oblivion stream starting in July. We've got our cast of players already lined up. Lance and Relin are in it, but we also have Ravinia, Tamshu, Evie Eternal, and House, which is, you've seen them in Haunted Chronicles. Our casting call for Chicago is open. It will be open until the end of July, and then we will start looking at the Chicago players. But I can tell you, I'm aiming for 6 as the target, maybe 8. But if there's 8, there's only going to be 6 on the stream at a time. But if we're going to do guests, we will have guests as part of the initial thing instead of throwing them in later. So there will be already preset guest characters that were part of the creation and part from the beginning. So when they show up, I don't have to create storylines. Maybe one of the guests is a sire of one of the players where they meet. Or maybe I'll have the guest as one of the primogen of the city in case they ever meet their primogen. So we can do the guests that way rather than whole storyline creations. But do apply. I know we're going to get a lot of responses. We had 14 for Wraith. I'm suspecting we're going to get a lot more for Chicago, but you're going to see a lot of familiar faces in Chicago, not going to lie. That's the way it is. So anything anyone wants to add as we're ending here? It's been great. I love all the fans. I love the players.
Yes, thank you all for watching us. This has been great.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much. We love that you guys love the story that we shared with you, and we love the community that has sprouted up from this. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It has been fun. So thank you all for watching.
Yep, and I guess we will call it a night then. So thank you all for coming, and we love you. And I'm going to be sad that this is DC by Night. I'm starting to feel that little hitch, like I might get teary again, so I'm not going to do it. But thank you all, and we'll see you, some of you for Haunted Chronicles, some of you for Ishbel, and we'll see you, hopefully all of you for Wraith, because holy hell, you never see a Wraith stream, and you're going to see one now. So good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.